You checked your bank account this morning, and for a second, just a second, your stomach dropped. You make good money. You've worked hard your whole life, and yet somehow, by the third week of the month, you're doing math in your head at the grocery store. You're not lazy. You're not bad with numbers. You didn't do anything wrong today. But something has been quietly draining you for years. Not one big mistake. 15 small ones. Habits so normal, so invisible that you'd never even call them mistakes. You'd call them life. Today, we're going to look at all 15, not to shame you, to wake you up. Because somewhere in the next 15 habits, you're going to hear your own life described back to you. And when that happens, don't look away. Stay with me. This is where it starts to change. Let's start with the ones that don't even feel like spending. The ones that hide inside your bank statement, like static. Background noise you stopped hearing years ago. Number 1. Forgotten subscriptions. Think about it. The streaming service you signed up for during a slow winter, back when you actually had time to watch something. The gym membership from January. You know the one. The app you downloaded for a free trial and forgot to cancel, and now it's been charging you $14.99 a month for 11 months straight. None of these feel like a decision. That's the trick. A decision would make you pause. This isn't a decision, it's a subscription. It just happens. Quietly. Every single month. Like a small tax on forgetting. Take out your phone tonight. Scroll through your bank statement. Not the balance, the transactions. Really look. I promise you, there's at least one name on there you don't recognize anymore. Something you agreed to once, years ago, and never thought about again. That's not a $9.99 problem. That's a habit of not looking. And habits of not looking are expensive. Multiply that $9.99 by 12 months, by 3 or 4 services you forgot about, by however many years you've been meaning to check. And you start to see it. Not one leak. A slow flood. Number 2. Impulse buying via one-click checkout. Here's the truth. Nobody wants to say out loud, they built it this way on purpose. Amazon didn't put a Buy Now button next to your thumb by accident. Delivery apps didn't make ordering food easier than making a sandwich by accident. Every friction between you and your money has been engineered away, deliberately, carefully, by people whose entire job is figuring out how to make you spend without thinking. You used to have to get in the car, drive to a store, walk the aisles. That drive gave you time to change your mind. Now the distance between wanting something and owning it is one tap, one single tap. And your brain, the same brain that evolved to hunt and gather, to think twice before wasting resources, never developed a defense for that. It wasn't built for a world where desire and possession are separated by less than 3 seconds. So you order. And a box shows up 2 days later, and some part of you thinks, did I even want this? You open it, and there's a flicker of guilt mixed with a flicker of pleasure. And then it goes in a drawer or a closet next to 3 other things that gave you the exact same feeling. That's not weakness, that's design. But recognizing the design is the first step to not falling for it every time. The next time your thumb hovers over that button, just wait. 60 seconds, that's all. Most impulses don't survive 60 seconds of silence. Number 3, paying full price for everything. This one is quieter, sneakier. It's not about buying things you don't need. It's about how you buy the things you do need. Never comparing prices, never checking if there's a cashback app, a coupon code, a better deal 3 clicks away. Just paying. Whatever the number says. Because comparing feels like too much effort, or worse. Because some part of you feels like comparing prices is what people who don't have money do. I want you to sit with that for a second, because I've met wealthy people, genuinely wealthy people, who compare prices on toothpaste. Not because they need to, because they respect their money enough to ask if there's a smarter way to spend it. Paying full price isn't a sign of success. It's often just the absence of a habit. A 5-minute habit. Compare, search, ask. It won't make you rich by itself. But it's a signal to yourself that you're paying attention again. And attention, more than any budgeting app, is where all of this actually begins. 3 habits. None of them feel dramatic. None of them feel like the reason you're struggling. But add them up over a year. The forgotten subscriptions, the one-tap purchases, the full-price groceries and gadgets and dinners, and you're looking at thousands of dollars, not stolen from you, given away, quietly, by you. And here's the part that matters most. None of these are about discipline. They're about awareness. You can't fix what you've stopped noticing. You can't plug a leak you've never seen. Now, that was the easy part. The next 3 aren't hiding in your bank statement. They're hiding in your wallet, in the little rectangle of plastic you carry every single day. And they're a lot harder to look at because they don't just cost you money, they cost you peace. Here's the truth. Nobody wants to say out loud, they built it this way on purpose. Amazon didn't put a buy now button next to your thumb by accident. Delivery apps didn't make ordering food easier than making a sandwich by accident. Every friction between you and your money has been engineered away, deliberately, carefully, by people whose entire job is figuring out how to make you spend without thinking. You used to have to get in the car, drive to a store, walk the aisles. That drive gave you time to change your mind. Now the distance between wanting something and owning it is one tap, one single tap. And your brain, the same brain that evolved to hunt and gather, to think twice before wasting resources, never developed a defense for that. It wasn't built for a world where desire and possession are separated by less than 3 seconds. So you order. And a box shows up 2 days later, and some part of you thinks, did I even want this? That's not weakness, that's design. But recognizing the design is the first step to not falling for it every time. Number 3, paying full price for everything. This one is quieter, sneakier. It's not about buying things you don't need. It's about how you buy the things you do need. Never comparing prices. Never checking if there's a cashback app, a coupon code, a better deal 3 clicks away. Just paying, whatever the number says, because comparing feels like too much effort, or worse, because some part of you feels like comparing prices is what people who don't have money do. I want you to sit with that for a second, because I've met wealthy people, genuinely wealthy people, who compare prices on toothpaste, not because they need to, because they respect their money enough to ask if there's a smarter way to spend it. Paying full price isn't a sign of success. It's often just the absence of a habit. A 5-minute habit. Compare, search, ask. It won't make you rich by itself, but it's a signal to yourself that you're paying attention again. 3 habits. None of them feel dramatic. None of them feel like the reason you're struggling. But add them up over a year. The forgotten subscriptions, the one-tap purchases, the full-price groceries and gadgets and dinners, and you're looking at thousands of dollars, not stolen from you, given away. quietly. By you. And here's the part that matters most. None of these are about discipline. They're about awareness. You can't fix what you've stopped noticing. Now, that was the easy part. The next three aren't hiding in your bank statement. They're hiding in your wallet. And they're a lot harder to look at. Buy now, pay later isn't helping you. It's rewiring your brain to spend money you don't have. I want you to really hear that sentence because it's not an exaggeration. It's not marketing language from some finance guru trying to scare you into watching the next video. It's just what's happening, quietly, every time you check that little box at checkout. Number 4, buy now, pay later. 4 easy payments of $37.50. That's how it's phrased, isn't it? Never $150. Always broken into pieces small enough to feel like nothing. A pair of shoes. A blender. A jacket you didn't need but looked nice on the model. Nothing that would have bankrupted you if you paid for it outright. But that's exactly the problem. It was never about the amount. It was about training you. Every time you split a small, unnecessary purchase into 4 payments, you're teaching your brain something. You're teaching it that if you can't afford something today, there's always a workaround. That waiting and saving are optional. That the gap between I want it and I can afford it doesn't have to exist anymore. You can just paper over it with someone else's money and pay them back a little at a time. And here's what nobody tells you. It's not really about the interest, because a lot of these plans don't even charge interest if you pay on time. It's about what it does to your relationship with waiting. Waiting used to be part of buying something. Now it's been removed, and once you remove waiting from spending, you remove the only thing that used to protect you from yourself. Number 5, paying only the credit card minimum. This is the one that keeps people up at 2 a.m. staring at the ceiling, doing math they don't want to do. Here's what the minimum payment actually is. It's not a payment plan. It's a slow-motion trap dressed up to look like relief. You see the number, minimum due, $45, and you feel a wave of relief. You can handle $45. Of course you can, so you pay it, and you move on with your life. But that $45 barely touches the debt. Most of it goes to interest. Money you're paying simply for the privilege of still owing money. The balance barely moves. Next month, there's a new purchase, a new minimum, and the number creeps up instead of down. This is compound interest working against you instead of for you. The same force that builds wealth when you're investing is the exact same force that buries you when you're in debt. It doesn't care which direction it's pointed. It just multiplies. Quietly, relentlessly, whether you're watching or not. I've talked to people in their 50s who've been making minimum payments for over a decade, not because they're irresponsible. Because minimum payments feel responsible. They feel like doing something. But doing something and doing something that works are 2 very different things. And by the time most people realize the difference, they've paid for that television, that vacation, that emergency 2 or 3 times over, in interest alone. Number 6, financing a car beyond your means. Let's talk about the car in your driveway. There's an old rule that most people have never heard, and even fewer follow. Your car payment shouldn't eat more than 10 to 15% of your take-home pay. Most people I know are closer to 20, 25%, some higher. And they don't even know it. Because the finance office at the dealership never mentions percentages. They mention the monthly payment. We can get you into this for $612 a month. That's it. That's the whole conversation. Nobody says, this is nearly a quarter of what you bring home, and it's going to a machine that loses value the moment you drive it off the lot. A car isn't an investment. It's a depreciating box of metal that gets you from one place to another. And there is nothing wrong with wanting something nice, something safe, something you're proud of. But when the payment becomes a weight you carry every single month, when it quietly determines how much stress you feel every payday, it stops being transportation. It becomes a monthly reminder of a decision made in a moment of excitement, in a showroom, under fluorescent lights, with someone whose job was to make you feel good about signing. 3 habits, all different, all disguised as convenience, as normal life, as everybody does this. But look closer, and you'll see the same thread running through all 3. Money you don't have yet, spent on things that don't build anything, borrowed from a future version of you who never agreed to the deal. And that future version of you, the one at 55, at 60, looking at retirement and feeling that familiar knot in the stomach. He's the one who inherits all of it. We're not done yet, because the next 3 habits aren't about money at all. Not really. They live somewhere deeper, in the way you think. This isn't a money problem, it's a mindset problem. And it's why smart people stay broke. I need you to sit with that for a moment because it's uncomfortable. It's much easier to believe the problem is external. The economy, the job, the bills, the timing. It's much harder to look inward and ask, is some of this coming from me? From what I believe is even possible? Number 7, scarcity mindset. You've heard the phrase, money doesn't grow on trees. Maybe your parents said it. Maybe their parents said it to them. It gets passed down like a family heirloom nobody asked for. A belief, quietly inherited, that there will never be enough. That money is something you fight for, hoard, protect. Never something you grow. And here's the thing about scarcity mindset. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't feel like fear. It feels like realism. It feels like being smart, being cautious, being the responsible one. I'm just being careful. Investing is for people who already have money. I can't afford to take that risk. Sound familiar? But look closer. Scarcity mindset isn't caution. It's a story you've told yourself so many times, it stopped feeling like a story and started feeling like truth. And the tragedy of it is this. The belief that it will never work out becomes the very reason it never gets a chance to. You never invest because you believe you can't win, so you never win. The prophecy fulfills itself, not because the market failed you, but because you never let it try. Number 8, social comparison, lifestyle flexing. Let's talk about the version of yourself you show people. The car in the driveway that's newer than it needs to be. The vacation photos. The dinner you couldn't quite afford but posted anyway, angled just right. Nobody says this part out loud, so I will. A huge amount of spending isn't about the thing itself. It's about being seen. It's about a coworker, a neighbor, an old classmate scrolling past a photo and thinking, for half a second, wow, they're doing well. The half second of imagined admiration. That's what people are actually buying. Not the watch, not the trip, the half second. And here's what makes it so dangerous. The people you're comparing yourself to are very likely doing the exact same thing. Financing the same lifestyle. Performing the same success. Nobody posts a photo of their 401k balance. Nobody flexes their emergency fund. So you end up in a room full of people, all pretending to be further ahead than they are. Each one convincing the others that this is normal, that this is what success looks like. when really it's a shared performance, and everyone in the room is a little bit broke behind the filter. You are not competing against reality. You're competing against a highlight reel, and you cannot win a race against something that isn't real. Number 9, fear of investing. This one is personal for a lot of people your age. Maybe you remember 2008. Maybe you remember a parent who lost money in the market and swore never again. Maybe somewhere along the way, someone told you the stock market is just gambling for rich people, and it stuck. So the money sits in a savings account, earning next to nothing, sometimes less than nothing, once you account for inflation quietly eating away at its value every single year. It feels safe. It feels responsible. It feels like the opposite of risk. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Leaving your money in a savings account for 30 years isn't the safe choice. It's just a slower, quieter kind of loss. Inflation doesn't announce itself with a crash. It doesn't show up on the news. It just erodes year after year until the dollar you saved is worth less than the dollar you earned. You didn't lose money in a dramatic moment. You lost it in silence, a little at a time, while feeling perfectly safe the entire time. Fear of investing isn't caution. It's a different kind of risk, one that doesn't feel like risk because nothing bad seems to be happening. Until you're 65, doing the math, and realizing safe cost you more than risky ever would have. 3 mindsets: scarcity, comparison, fear. None of them show up on a bank statement, but all 3 of them shape every decision that does. And here's where it gets even more uncomfortable. Because the next 3 habits aren't about what you spend or how you think. They're about what happens the moment more money enters your life. You could double your salary tomorrow and still be broke in 5 years. Here's why. I've watched it happen. People get the raise, the promotion, the better job offer they'd been chasing for years. And for a moment, everything feels like it's about to change. And then, somehow, 2 or 3 years later, they're in the exact same position they were before, just with a bigger number on their paycheck and the exact same amount of stress in their chest. Number 10. Lifestyle inflation. Here's how it happens, quietly, almost invisibly. You get a raise, say an extra $500 a month, and you think, I've earned this. I've worked hard for this. Which is true. So the apartment gets upgraded, the car gets nicer, dinners out become a little more frequent, a little more expensive, nothing dramatic, nothing that feels reckless in the moment. Just an upgrade, a small celebration of how far you've come. But here's the part nobody warns you about. Every raise you've ever gotten has, at some point, quietly become the new normal. And then the new floor. You don't feel richer. You just feel like yourself, at a slightly higher cost. The extra $500 doesn't go toward your future. It goes toward maintaining a version of the present that keeps expanding right alongside your income. This is why so many people who make 6 figures still live paycheck to paycheck. It was never about the number. It was about the gap between what comes in and what goes out. And that gap doesn't grow on its own. You have to protect it, on purpose, every single time your income changes. Number 11. No automated savings. Let me ask you something honestly. How many times have you told yourself, I'll save whatever's left at the end of the month? And how often is there anything left? Here's the truth about willpower. It's a terrible financial strategy. Not because you're weak. Because willpower is a limited resource, and by the time the end of the month arrives, yours has usually already been spent on 100 smaller decisions. Deciding not to order takeout. deciding not to buy the thing in the cart, deciding, until there's nothing left to decide with, and saving becomes whatever survives after everything else has already won. The people who actually build wealth almost never rely on willpower. They rely on automation. The money moves before they see it, before they can talk themselves out of it, before the impulse even gets a vote. It's not about being more disciplined than you. It's about removing the moment where discipline is even required. If you take one thing from this entire video, let it be this: pay yourself first, automatically, the same day your paycheck lands. Even if it's small, especially if it's small. Because a habit built on $50 a month becomes a habit that scales. Number 12. No emergency fund. This is the one that turns a bad week into a bad year. The car breaks down. The water heater dies. Something happens. And it always happens, because that's simply what life does. And there's no cushion. No buffer. So it goes on the credit card. Which brings us right back to habit number 5. The minimum payment. The compound interest working against you. One unplanned expense with no emergency fund behind it can undo months, sometimes years, of otherwise responsible living. An emergency fund isn't about being pessimistic. It's not about expecting disaster around every corner. It's about something much simpler. It's about the difference between an inconvenience and a crisis. With savings, a broken transmission is annoying. Without savings, it's a 6-month setback that follows you around quietly on every statement for a long time after the car is already fixed. 3 habits, lifestyle inflation, no automation, no cushion. None of them are about how much you earn. All 3 are about what happens to the money once it arrives, and whether you've built any structure around it at all, or whether you're just hoping, every single month, that this time it'll somehow work out differently. It won't. Not on its own. Structure is the only thing that changes the outcome, and structure isn't complicated. It's just something most people never sit down and build. We're almost through all 15. 3 left. And these 3 are the ones that tie everything else together. Because without them, none of the first 12 habits ever really get fixed. Here's the exact system to reverse all 15 of these, starting with step 1, today. We've spent a lot of time looking backward, at the leaks, the traps, the mindsets, the way income quietly disappears no matter how much of it there is. Now let's talk about the 3 habits that, more than any others, decide whether any of this actually changes, or whether you close this video, nod along, and go right back to the same patterns tomorrow. Number 13, not tracking expenses at all. Here's a question worth sitting with. Do you actually know, down to the dollar, what you spent last month? Not roughly. Not probably around. Exactly. Most people don't. And it's not because they don't care. It's because looking feels uncomfortable, almost like stepping on a scale after a hard year. There's a quiet dread to it. What if the number is worse than I think? So the statement stays unopened. The app stays uninstalled. And the not knowing becomes its own kind of comfort. False comfort, but comfort all the same. Here's what I've learned though, and what I want you to really hear. Money you don't track doesn't disappear less. It disappears exactly the same amount. The only difference is whether you're the one who's aware of it, or whether it's happening entirely behind your back. Tracking your expenses isn't about guilt. It's not about punishing yourself for every coffee or every dinner out. It's about turning the lights on in a room you've been walking through in the dark for years. Once you can see the room, You stop bumping into the same furniture. That's it. That's the whole magic of it. There is no magic, just light where there used to be none. Number 14, ignoring passive income and investments. Let's talk about the difference between money that works and money that waits. Every dollar you earn from your job, from your time, your hours, your effort, that dollar only exists because you showed up and traded something for it. It's finite. It's tied to your body, your energy, your hours in a day, and none of those things are unlimited, especially not at this stage of life. But a dollar that's invested in an index fund, in a retirement account, in something that grows while you sleep, while you're at dinner, while you're on vacation, while you're doing absolutely nothing at all, that dollar doesn't need you anymore. It works without your permission, without your attention, without your energy. That's the entire difference between working for money and having money work for you. It's not a slogan. It's math, playing out quietly, decade after decade. And I understand, after everything we talked about earlier, the fear, the 2008 memories, the market is for other people belief. I understand why this feels uncomfortable, but ignoring investing isn't neutral. It's not playing it safe. It's choosing by default that every dollar you ever save will only ever be worth exactly what it's worth today, not more, ever. And in a world where prices only move one direction over time, that's not safety. That's a slow, guaranteed loss, wearing the costume of caution. Number 15, no clear financial goals. This is the last one, and in many ways, it's the one that made all the other 14 possible. Because here's what happens when there's no destination. Every dollar becomes negotiable. Every purchase can be justified, because there's nothing to measure it against. No target, no number, no date, no why. Just vague hope that someday, somehow, things will feel more stable than they do right now. But hope isn't a plan, and someday isn't a date on any calendar. What does retirement actually look like for you? Not in general. For you, specifically. At what age? With how much saved? Doing what, exactly? With your days? Do you know the number? Not a rough guess. The actual number. Most people your age have never written it down. Not because they're careless, but because nobody ever sat them down and asked. Nobody ever said, "You need a target, or you'll spend the next 20 years drifting toward nothing in particular." A goal changes the entire equation. It turns, "Should I buy this?" into, "Does this get me closer to the life I said I wanted, or further away?" That single question, asked honestly, before almost every purchase, is worth more than any budgeting app, any finance guru, any framework I could hand you today. 15 habits. Some about money leaking out quietly. Some about debt disguised as convenience. Some about the stories we tell ourselves about what we deserve, what we can afford, what's even possible. Some about what happens the moment more money shows up. And these last 3, tracking, investing, and having a real goal, are what turn awareness into an actual, different outcome. You didn't fail at money. You inherited habits, defaults, and a system that was never built with your future in mind. But awareness is where every single change in your life has ever started. Not motivation, not luck. Awareness, followed by one decision, made differently, starting today. If you've made it this far with me, really made it this far, through all 15 of these, sitting with each one honestly instead of skipping ahead, I want to say something to you directly before we close this out. Most people don't make it this far in a video like this one. They watch the first few minutes, feel a little seen, and click away before it gets uncomfortable. You didn't. That says something about you, whether you realize it or not. Stick around, subscribe to this channel, and come back and sit with us every day. Not because I need the number to go up, because I think you and I are having the kind of conversation most people your age never get to have. Honestly, without judgment, without someone selling you a course at the end of it. There's enough noise out there already. Enough people yelling about hustle and grinding and getting rich by 30. That's not what this is. This is slower, quieter. And I think, if you've stayed this long, that's exactly what you were looking for. And I want to ask you something, right here, out loud. Which one of these 15 hit closest to home? Was it the subscriptions you forgot about? The car payment that's a little heavier than it should be? The savings account you've been too afraid to touch? Or the goal you've never actually written down? I'd genuinely like to know. Leave it in the comments, not to be judged, to be seen. Because I promise you, whichever one it was, there are a few hundred other people reading this exact comment section who felt the same thing in their chest when they heard it. I read every comment on this channel, and I've noticed something over the years. The ones that get the most replies, the most quiet me toos from strangers, are never the polished ones. They're the honest ones. Someone admitting they've been carrying a car payment they can't really afford for 3 years. Someone saying they've never once looked at their retirement account because they're afraid of what they'll find. That kind of honesty is contagious. In the best way. It gives everyone else in the comments permission to stop pretending too. Now, let's go back. Because there's one more layer to all of this, and it's the part that actually ties every single habit we've talked about together. Quietly, underneath everything else we covered today. Here's the thing about all 15 of these. The subscriptions, the one-tap purchases, the minimum payments, the car that costs too much, the scarcity, the comparison, the fear, the lifestyle inflation, the missing emergency fund, the goals that were never written down. None of them, on their own, would ruin anyone. A forgotten subscription doesn't bankrupt a person. One impulse purchase doesn't derail a retirement. That's not how this works. And that's exactly why it's so easy to ignore year after year. It's never one thing. It's 15 small things, compounding quietly for years, sometimes decades, the same way interest compounds, except in the wrong direction. And compounding in either direction doesn't announce itself. It doesn't feel dramatic while it's happening. It just accumulates. Silently. Until one day you look up, you're 45 or 50 or 55, and you're doing math you never expected to still be doing at this stage of your life. That's the part almost nobody warns you about. Not the dramatic loss, a stolen wallet, a bad investment, a scam. The quiet erosion of 1,000 ordinary Tuesdays, each one completely unremarkable on its own. But here's what I need you to understand, because it's the whole reason I wrote this for you today. Compounding works both ways in both directions, without playing favorites. The same quiet force that drained your money for 15 years can rebuild it. The same 15 habits that worked against you can be flipped, one at a time, starting today. And they don't require a windfall or a lottery ticket or some dramatic turnaround story to make it happen. They just require you to see them. Clearly. Honestly. The way we just did, together, for the last several minutes, without flinching away from any of it. You canceled nothing yet. You haven't automated a single transfer. You haven't written down one goal, I know that. But something changed anyway just now. Because you can't unsee a pattern once you've truly seen it. That forgotten subscription is never going to feel invisible again. That buy now, pay later button is never going to feel as harmless as it did an hour ago. That's not nothing. That's actually where every real change in a person's financial life has ever started, whether they noticed it happening or not. Not with a plan. Not yet. With a moment of seeing clearly what was always right there in front of you, waiting patiently to be noticed. So let's finish this the right way. Let's talk about what happens next. After the seeing, after the awareness, after this exact moment you're in right now, sitting here, listening. Because awareness without a next step is just another form of the same trap. And you didn't come this far, sat through all 15 of these, just to feel a little guilty and move on with your day like nothing happened. You came this far because some part of you is ready for something to actually be different. Not tomorrow, not eventually, now, while it's still fresh. Let's finish it. Here's what I know. After all these years of watching people, really watching them, not judging them, try to fix their relationship with money. I've seen the ones who made it, and I've seen the ones who talked about making it for years and never actually moved. The difference between the two was never intelligence. It was never even income. It was something much smaller and much less glamorous than that. The people who actually change aren't the ones who found some secret. There is no secret. You just heard all 15 of them, plainly, without any trick to it, without a paywall at the end, without someone waiting to sell you the real answer in a follow-up video. The people who change are the ones who stop waiting to feel ready and just move one thing. Just one. Maybe tonight, it's opening that bank statement and finally canceling the subscription you forgot existed. Maybe it's setting up one automatic transfer, even $25, the same day your paycheck lands, so it moves before you ever get the chance to talk yourself out of it. Maybe it's just writing down on a piece of paper, in your own handwriting, what you actually want your life to look like at 65. Not what you're supposed to want. Not what looks good to anyone else. What you actually want when nobody's watching and nobody's judging the answer. Whichever one it is, it doesn't need to be impressive. It doesn't need an audience. Nobody needs to know you did it, except you. That's actually the point. The habits that quietly ruined most people's finances were never public either. Nobody announced their forgotten subscription. Nobody posted about their minimum payment. These things live in private, which means the fix has to start in private too, without applause, without anyone watching, to confirm you actually did it. You don't need to fix all 15 tonight. You were never going to. Nobody does. If someone tells you they overhauled their entire financial life in a weekend, they're either lying to you or about to burn out in a month and quietly slide right back to where they started. This isn't a sprint, and it was never supposed to be one. It's 15 small corrections made steadily by someone who finally stopped looking away. That's the whole method. There isn't a more complicated one hiding behind it, no matter how many people try to sell you one. I think about the version of you 5 years from now. The one who's already made these changes. Quietly, without announcing it to anyone. Without a dramatic before and after story to post online for strangers to admire. He checks his bank account and his stomach doesn't drop anymore. He knows the number. He built the cushion. He automated the savings. He wrote down the goal, and he's closer to it than he was last year. and closer still than the year before that. He's not richer because something lucky happened to him. He's richer because he stopped bleeding quietly, one habit at a time, on an ordinary evening a lot like this one. I don't know exactly what that version of you looks like. Maybe he's still driving the same car, just paid off now instead of financed. Maybe he's still living in the same house, just with a number in a retirement account that used to keep him up at night and doesn't anymore. The details are yours to fill in, but the feeling, that specific quiet exhale of no longer bracing yourself every time you open an app, that feeling is available to almost anyone willing to do this work. Slowly, honestly, one habit at a time. That version of you isn't lucky. He didn't win anything. He didn't inherit anything, or catch some perfect break in the market, or find some shortcut the rest of us missed. He just stopped doing the 15 things that were quietly working against him, one at a time, starting on an ordinary day that probably felt a lot like today. A day with nothing special about it, except that he finally decided to look. I can't tell you which one of these 15 is yours to fix first. Only you know that. You knew it the moment I said it, somewhere in the last hour. You felt it, even if you didn't want to admit it, even if you kept scrolling past it in your mind and moved on to the next one. That's the one. Go back to it. Start there. Not with all 15. With that one. If this meant something to you, if even one of these 15 landed the way I think it did, do me a favor before you go. Subscribe to this channel and share this with 5 people who need to hear it. Not because it makes me feel good. Because I promise you, someone in your life is doing 3 or 4 of these right now without knowing it. The same way you probably were an hour ago, before any of this had a name. And sometimes the most valuable thing you can hand someone isn't advice. It's just a mirror held up at exactly the right moment when they're finally ready to look into it.
Leave a comment, a real one. Tell me honestly which of these 15 hit the hardest, and tell me what you want us to talk about next, so the next conversation actually meets you where you are. This channel exists because of conversations like that one, not the other way around. I read them. All of them. I'll be here. Same time, same honesty. No shortcuts sold at the end of it. Just this. One habit at a time, one honest look at a time. Take care of your money. It's been taking care of you longer than you've noticed.